This Thing Called Life is a podcast dedicated to exploring the twists, turns, and transformative moments that shape our lives and the lives of others. It is a space where we can share our experiences so we can learn, grow, and empower change. You're listening to This Thing Called Life. I am your host, Atlas. Today our guest is Phillip Fife. Phillip is a retired stylist, business owner, educator, and currently a singer. Phillip shares his experience grieving his mother's passing, accepting and embracing his sexual identity, and finding the power in his voice. We start the conversation with Phillip describing what it was like going through addiction while helping his mother with dementia. Yeah, what is your turning point and sort of what led up to this turning point?
I was a alcoholic for many, many years, 40 plus, and other drugs. I got very sick, had diverticulitis, probably caught by a family history of it, but probably aggravated by the alcohol. And I had to have emergency surgery. I've had 2 near-death experiences, and they had to open me because there was a blockage in my intestines. And they afterwards had stapled me up. Well, when you staple the stomach, it makes the abdominal wall very weak. So all these hernias had developed, and then I had to have hernia surgery, and it was a bad recall on the mesh, and it just led to another thing. And I was abusing alcohol on top of medications. I was very sick for a long time. And then the turning point was right around COVID, slightly before COVID, but part of it. And I was heavily into my addiction, but I was losing my mother. My mother was kind of losing her mind to dementia, mild form of dementia. I went and got my certification as an Alzheimer's facilitator because I needed to be I wanted to be educated about what she was going through. And then I was suffering and she was suffering. I didn't know how to help her or understand everything. So after the certification, I found out that her dementia was pretty mild. It's very prevalent in our family. Her sister, though, had full-blown Alzheimer's. And my mother's was pretty mild, but reoccurring UTI was causing confusion on top of her mild dementia, which made her look like she had full-blown Alzheimer's. And I couldn't deal with it. And then I had another bowel blockage, and I was on antidepressants and drinking. And finally, I had another bowel blockage, and I took all my medicine. I went AMA, and uh, I detoxed myself on my couch for about 48 hours and said a prayer. And I don't know how it happened, grace interceded that I got through that first 48 hours because it was pretty intense withdrawing. And then I had discovered Annie Grace on just some Facebook because I had suffered for so long. I tried medication. I tried 12-step groups. I tried AA, everything. And it was so prevalent history in my family that I just could not see beyond the addiction. And so Annie Grace wrote a book, This Naked Mind, but I found her on Facebook. She runs a 30-day alcohol experiment. And it goes through the science of alcohol and how it addicts you, the subliminal messages that just sit, and it's very, I'm very passionate about it because it's very prevalent in TV and screen, how they're using alcohol. It's always been shown to be this coping mechanism. And I was drowning, years I was drowning who I was and trying to numb myself from who I was. And so on the 4th day of the alcohol experiment, I did a vision board. I had all these wonderful things going on. And to be honest, in my journal, when I journaled that first year, it's been 6 years now. And a lot of the things on my vision board and my journey came to pass. But on the 4th day, Dr. Amy Johnson, she wrote the little book of big change. She was in an interview on the 4th day, and I got goosebumps. I get emotional because she resonated with me so deeply about um, who we are beyond our addictions and how we're whole already, and that it's more of a subtraction process of unlearning our behaviors and who we are to to who we are underneath, and that addiction is caused by thought. And in her book, and I ended up, she gifted me her book actually, and then I took her 6-week course, and it really kind of cemented some of this, and that I thought really, and Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, if you ever heard of her, wrote about this too. A thought can only last 90 seconds, so before another thought will develop, and it's our attachment to the thought that creates that spiral process of addiction. And so she did a podcast with me about a year after I was sober, but one day I was doing dishes, and she she shows you how to feel into the mm, what's going on in your body, to sense what's going on in your body, and feel things instead of attaching a story to it or a thought to a story. And I was in the terrible midst of losing my mother, and I'd gotten Charlie that year, and I was doing dishes one night, and I was sobbing so hard about my mother, but I was Charlie was running around in circles. He was just a baby chasing his tail, and he fell over because he got dizzy, and it's like uh, sorrow and all these emotions kind of were happening at once, and I sensed myself outside of my thought, or who I was outside of that, and it reminded me of my two near-death experiences, and then it became this search for who I am beyond this form, and that's been the last 6 years of my life. I by great, and there's Amy and I, we talk about this in our own forum a lot. We have a forum. There's no explanation about how it happened because because I quit smoking too in the same day, quit drinking, quit smoking. I never had another thought over that. I never had a craving or anything. I didn't, beyond that, when I knew it was being created by thought, everything just melted. It's like the house of cards fell about my identity, who I thought I was, and it was a huge awakening experience for me.
There's so many wonderful things, Philip, that I'm hearing, and and one of the things is, and I know you had mentioned it in the highly sensitive people, and that things can be very overwhelming. You know, emotions can be very overwhelming, and that could be like a good thing, but that can be a shitty thing too. I mean, when things get too overwhelming, anger, fear, happiness, joy, everything can be overwhelming, and you and we and I were finding ways to cope with it. And
Mhm.
the ways that society and maybe our parents or family kind of showed us is, by numbing. We numb it through
Sure.
drugs and alcohol. And
And
I feel
food
like
and exercise, and I mean, it can be anything,
Mhm.
really.
Sex, gambling, and,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
buying things.
anything.
You know what
My
I mean?
dog,
Yeah.
my dog is my addiction,
Like,
which is a great addiction. So,
totally, absolutely. But and I'm hearing that like there was like I mean, everything fell at once, right? It's sort of like the way, who you thought you were, and
it
maybe
was
your
in an instant.
values,
Yeah.
it just was like in one instant, everything like slipped away and disappeared. And that in itself can be scary, right? But at the same time, I mean, it's a beautiful way because, when we let go of everything, we've got so much space to bring in some other things. And so I'm wondering, like, how did things change for you?
It made me realize, it made me see my reactions and be more aware of them as they're occurring. Right now, I'm doing fascia work. I'm part of Agape International, it's a spiritual community, and I started to do this 28-day reset and some fascia work, and their theory and belief. And I've really gotten it's my second round. And I've gotten so much out of it because I think our body holds a lot of trauma, and but so much has changed about. The stories that I tell around my addiction, my family history, those are all stories that we make up after it's our narrator in our mind. um, telling us. And, I came to Vegas 5 years ago, and it shook me because eh, I'm a very spiritual man. So I always start my day in prayer, and life has been saved. So I have nothing but to give thanks every day, the best that I can, and live my life to be the best person I can. But my dog and I were attacked by two large unleashed dogs, and it shook my faith, and it exasperated my PTSD, and I got very angry for a long time. I was in a violent relationship. I ended up in a safe house, and that's when we were attacked. And it just I for 2 years just felt very angry. And I went into therapy for it, and the therapist helped me to see that, and I had lost my mother in all this. So she got passed away finally, and I was able to see and when she did her assessment, I tested for PTSD, but I tested higher for depression, and it was being masked as anger. And when I saw through the illusion of and the thought, it finally, the anger turned into severe sadness, not just for me, but for the other woman who was also traumatized. It's not like she intended that morning to come out and attack her, for her dogs to attack us, although it was irresponsible of her not to have them on a leash. It made me finally, the anger fell away kind of on its own. Halfway through pit therapy, I just was able to see it for what it was. And I have, as well as some childhood CPTSD that I had been dealing with for years. But um, so much of that has changed once I was able to see. And Amy and the group and our forum, I've been with them all these years now, what helped me to see who we are beyond our physical and our narrator and our thoughts. And there was a time I followed Chris Niebauer too. I don't know if you know Dr. Chris Niebauer, No Self, No Problem. He wrote a book that's really good, and how uh, we're a we're kind of a product. Our egos are a product of our upbringings, our culture, our identities are formed that way. But it's not, because when we're born, we don't have any of that. I'm not Philip. We're labeled that eventually, and then we're also labeled, I'm Italian, I'm this, I'm that, but we're none of that. And you know what I mean? We're way beyond that, our physical form. And when I saw that, that's what really changed my life on a daily basis too. Seeing through. It doesn't mean suffering doesn't happen. It just means that I can see it for what it is.
It's this like this balance of like, it's these identities don't they don't make us who we are, but at the same time they shape our experiences. So we have these different experiences, living in this world, but at the same time they aren't who we are, and that's sort of part of the discovery of
And
that we aren't those. But the one thing that I was curious about is you mentioned these near death experiences, and I'm wondering how that sort of was that like an additional turning point? Was that like a discovery of who and what you were?
when my two near death experiences, a lot of people talk about seeing themselves outside of their body. My experience wasn't quite like that, although and I've talked to this extensively in our group about this, because so many people who have NDEs are heavily medicated. So part of that might be hallucinogenic. We don't know that. Do you know what I mean? Unless we're in that experience, because I had so many things. But the one thing that I was drawn to, and that happened both times, is the this is so hard to talk about, the black empty nothingness that we come from, the formlessness that we are. I experienced something that I can't explain, that was not a form. It wasn't my physical body. And I do this, I'm a lifetime meditator, TM, and I notice this as well when I meditate so far into it. You kind of lose the edges of your physical body. But I also remember it looked like a movie screen, like going really, really quick about all these memories and flashbacks of experiences, um, and just this black void, and and it's been this me seeking that for some reason since those experiences, seeking what is that? What is it we're made of? Who are we beyond that physical form? So that's what it was a quest of mine, I guess, for a long time. And then I found out that that's who we are. Is that we appear from that experience of nothingness and everything at the same time. If you know the movie, Everything All at Once, that movie, it's very, very good movie. And it's very much, I was so enamored by that because it was so prevalent about my experience. Everything happening all at once.
There's like a few things like that are coming to my mind. It's sort of like this realizing that there's like that and who and what we are a part of um uh far more dimensions, right? Because there's like the, you know, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, four, and it's sort of like you when you're meditating and when you had this near death experiences, you sort of went
It's like
back home or
Philip.
went closer.
Yeah, Philip falls away.
Right. Philip, in, you know, this three-dimensional form that, like, you know, that's the body, right? That shapes our experience and allows us to have this human experience, sort of goes away, and we kind of go back to go back home, which does not have, you know, these 3 dimensions at all. And
Don't you
there,
think
it's
too?
like,
I don't. I'm sorry to keep interrupting. Don't you think we live that experience? I think life is. We're always dancing in that every day. We just aren't aware of that. We're just not aware that we're living in the now, processing now, and then there's a story going on about it, and then we dance in between that the reality of who we are, and that projected character of who we are. It's supposed to be, I think, fun. And all the years I've stressed over that. It's like we're an avatar of a bigger experience of all of us, and it's all connected to each other. Subconscious. I mean, we are all one consciousness having an experience. It's like I'd like to compare it to a sun ray. So there's the sun, and we're all experiences bouncing off of that center. But
mhm,
all the
mhm.
same, because we all, if you think about it, we all have the same experience in our
Right, right,
thought.
right. Right. And it's just layers of sort of like, you know, how film is just a series of these present moments, these like one shots, and sort of that's sort of like what life is. It's just a series of present moments
I
all
love
happening at once.
that. I
And
love
if you
that.
bring all these present moments together, you create our life and our life experience. And sort of there are these like moments where we're in the present, right? I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, and we're sort of here together and we're present. But then there's a space in between the present where we kind of, you know, like you said, we start thinking and we have we start narrating what things
Right,
are and things like that. And so there's the present and then the narration between the present, right? And
right,
it's how can, you know, part of it is you know, how can we make sure we're more in that present space?
right. I think it's a bounce back every time is a remembering of that. And I think
Uh-huh.
people talk, you can see this very prevalent in the media about the awakening experience and enlightenment and all that. It's nothing but that I'm having this experience of talking to you right now instead of thinking about the experience. That's being asleep. So being awake is just being aware of that when you're not in the present experience and you're thinking about something or narrating the experience, then you're not awake at the moment.
There are a couple of things like listening to your story, Philip, is one, it was sort of like this seeking, right? This like wanting to know, but it was also like, you know, healing as well. And like and I know for you, that like acceptance has sort of shaped your letting go. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Acceptance of, so I have an identical twin brother. And um, when we were children, they couldn't tell us apart at all, other than our personalities were quite different, opposite of each other. And he was very attached to my dad. I was like my mother. He was hard. I was soft. He was masculine. I was feminine. It's quite remarkable to to look back. But I tried everything. I couldn't, like, I was tormented as a child. The first day of school, actually, I was chased by 30 black kids. We were in a very black neighborhood at the time, and so I was traumatized very early by who I because people were judging who I was because they thought I was a girl. They thought I was effeminate. I didn't want my hair cut. I cried like a baby all the time. And so they knew we were twins. And then my parents forced me to cut my hair, and they kind of um, told me I was a crybaby. You're too sensitive, blah, blah, blah. So I spent my whole childhood trying to hide that and to numb it and feeling ashamed for it. And so, uh, I grew up like in the closet, and then I knew I knew very young, by the time I was 10 years old, that I was gay. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to call it at the time, but I knew I wasn't attracted to women. I was attracted to men. And so then I felt that was wrong. I was raised Catholic. It was shame, guilt, fear, and I loathed it. So I numbed it, and I tried everything. I worked out every day. I got muscles. I wanted to be butch. You know what I mean? Whatever I could do not to be that way. And finally, I came out. I came out early, at 18ish, but there was still a lot of shame, especially on my mother's side, because she was strict Italian Catholic, and even in my 30s, she still thought I was going to get married, and I had an assistant at my salon. She thought we were together, and it just was never going to happen. But so still in my 30s, 40s, and even in my 50s, I was numbing that. And when I quit, I it it was, like the weight of the world came off me, and I felt like free. I felt free enough to be myself and not care what anyone else thought anymore. And so, uh, now it's like I feel, um, confident, and when I watched the movie with Alanis Morissette, HSP: The Untold Story, about highly sensitive people, it opened up a world for me too, because I realized there were so many other people like me in the world, that are highly sensitive, and knowing, and it's an important part of um, our because we're so compassionate and so empathetic. There's 20 million of us in the world, roughly. We add to the collective um, good of the consciousness of humanity, and it made me see my sensitivity in that light, and changed, and made me realize that I've been crying my life. I still cry every day almost, and that it's a gift instead of a burden. It's the way that the body is supposed to release the emotions and all the fear and anger. And if you think about those energies, they're kind of all the same with a different flavor. So even my nervousness talking to you, that excitement that builds up, it's the same feeling in your body as me going out to perform a song on stage in front of 1,000 people. It has a slightly different feel than anger or fear or anything like that, but it's still that clenching, that nervousness.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, it's definitely changed everything about me not trying to hide all those parts of me that I was ashamed of for so long. And everyone else loved it. I don't know why I was hiding it.
I mean, I feel like you got to show people you, and the other thing that can, like, I feel like, when we accept parts of ourselves, we begin to cultivate more acceptance for our external world too. Like,
And
it's
for
not
the
just like
people around us. Yeah.
Absolutely. It affects how we see the world, and we open up to the world, and the world opens up to us. It's sort of, our world becomes a reflection of what we're internally going through. And, when we accept these beautiful parts of ourselves, and we accept our external world, and things expand and our awareness expands. And it sounds like, that's what happened with your story. And, before we get to, because I think another, part of your growth is going to be, we talked about music. But before that, I know that, I mean, it sounds like your mom passing away was again, I think it was, I feel like that was a turning point as well. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. God, that really kind of threw me, and that's why I was, I think, primarily depressed, and the dog attack just kind of added to that. But um, my mother and I were best of friends. I was the last born, and uh, when but my mother was, raised very strict Italian Catholic, so she felt, a lot of shame, I think, around my, lifestyle choice, but even then, you can't blame anyone for that, or because she's a product of her own experience and her own childhood. But, all of my values, all my good values, beliefs, the things about my mother, it's like I got a beautiful combination of both my parents. My father taught me meditation, and exercise was so critical at 10, 12 years old. I've been doing it every day since, almost every day. And then my mother just was more free spirited. She was, a bartender her whole life, drove Harley Davidsons, Woodstock, Janis Joplin, smoked pot, party crazy. And so, I was, I got a nice balance of my mother's free spirit and my father's meditation, his centeredness, whatever it was, that I got from both of them. But I think that now in my life, seeing both of their personalities in me, but I think that me getting sober too, it brought so much healing to generations of my family that even if no one's aware of, there's got to be a higher um, consciousness that is aware that I'm not bringing that with me any further into my future. And I think I was able to really, especially now with this fascia work and stuff, really be able to release a lot of old stuff about my parents, and realize that they weren't to blame for anything either. We just are brought into this experience. I think we're all trying to do the best we can. I would hope so, in the moment that we're living. Even in the heights of my addiction, I was doing only the only thing I knew, and that's how our lives are. We don't know until we know. But I think, I projecting, at some point in our life there, with me, there was a surrender to something, a surrender to everything that I believed in or thought. Um, it's at 55 years old, this started, and I'm like, it's so I think our parents can only influence our experience to a certain degree at some point, even though it's late in life. We have to be responsible for who we are beyond that.
And, like, something that I'm hearing from you is gratitude. Like, I feel like this transformation that you've had, it happened in part because of, how you grew up. And I feel like you have a lot of gratitude for that experience, and and being able to share that with other people, and help other people, is a wonderful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, my therapist, after I was doing the therapy for our dog attack, had said, I had called because I needed to get some flight information for my PTSD to get Charlie on the airplane, and um, yeah, leaving Las Vegas is bittersweet because I moved out here to have a future with someone that didn't work out, and I did discover my voice, and I had to leave the course that I belonged. I don't have to, but I'm choosing to leave the course that I belong to. Um, But what my therapist said, and I always try to find, even though, like, I've had an amicable breakup, we have kind of tried to, I went back and forth with this a million times, this relationship, and I don't like to burn bridges, and I'm grateful for what I learned from the experience, especially what I will and will not tolerate or what I want for myself. And also that I discovered my voice when I was here, and so I give gratitude every day for that. And which was such a passion of mine for so many years and just below the surface of my life. And so when we were having our last session, she's like, you still walk in grace and gratitude after everything that happens. What else is there? I mean, if we walk every day in that, it doesn't end our suffering, but it will bring great joy. If you just, everyone has one thing in their life they can be grateful for. And I can tell you what it is. You're alive. So just that one thing changed your trajectory for the day, of the moment, whatever.
What I'm hearing also is that, in some ways, the boundaries in this healthy setting of boundaries has sort of like catapulted your singing and your music. And I'm wondering if we can kind of shift over to music and singing.
Yeah. Okay. So in high school, I was huge, and when I found out that there was something other that I can do than sports, and that I actually had an ear for music. I joined the chorus in probably sixth grade, spent sixth, seventh, eighth, all through junior high and high school. I went to West Virginia state champs. My sister was a singer. My dad was a very uh, noted saxophone player, played with George Benson, but never had a lesson. He all played everything by ear. So that's always was my passion before, but I couldn't make a career at it. So I went in the service, and I ended up being a hairdresser my whole life. But when I was getting sober, part of my journaling was like, one of the sentences in there is like, I know that I can sing to inspire people. And so a month after I moved to Las Vegas, I looked up the Las Vegas Men's Chorus. I went and auditioned. I got accepted. And I sang with them for the last 5 years all over Las Vegas. And it was just, what's amazing about this experience is that a couple things. First of all, that, like, my sense of identity, like I said, when I'm singing, it falls away. There's singing happening, but the sense of Philip falls away. But the miracle about in a chorus or a choir is how 100 voices could collide to create one sound and one voice. And I have a video that on YouTube actually of me singing this with the choir, with the chorus. And it's just an experience like nothing in the world, and it's all I ever wanna do. So, I've already kind of taken a position back in Erie when I get there, and I think that like I said, it's like we talk about there's one big unity of all of us. That's a perfect example of the oneness of all of us, but all different voices coming from one sound. So I love it. I don't wanna do anything else.
There's a few things coming to my mind. One is, I love that you want to, not only use your voice, but use it to inspire people and almost like give other people permission to sing. A lot of times when we do these things, we're giving someone else an opportunity to see them, and to see them through you.
Part of the Las Vegas Men's Course, part of their community outreach is a sing out festival that they've been doing every year. And it's for tenor and bass, junior high, high school boys to sing. And what we do is we go in the morning, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we bring 4 songs with us. We learn 4 songs with the students, and then we have a concert in the afternoon. And I'll tell you, if I would have had that in high school, it would have changed the trajectory of my life. To know that I got up, I did it. I was in the chorus, I did everything. I had some solos and stuff, but to know that it was all right to have that all the time, and just that's the whole thing for me, is how can I inspire people to not just sing for creativity, but just to live their creativity, because that's where I think, tap into our true potential of who we are is when we're creating.
as I'm listening to you, talk about being in a choir and singing and being creative, it's often a spiritual experience, and especially when I'm hearing you talk about being in a choir, I imagine sort of like there's a lot of these different meditative groups when you can kind of chant, right? And it's sort of this collective chanting that we can put ourselves in these trance-like states. And I feel like that's like it's similar, is it not?
It is. Anything there's many things. I part of this fascia agape community. On the right now, we talk about this, and I've given them a lot of input on it, especially for anxiety and stress. Any kind of humming, resonating with your voice or vocal cords when you're in a stressful situation, will help relieve that pretty quickly. Or nature, but humming and singing is an expression that definitely is very cathartic for me, but it's cathartic for everyone actually. And through this experience that I had here, my mother and I, one of our favorite movies, favorite songs is "Over the Rainbow." Dorothy, Judy Garland, and it was one of my maestro's favorites, and so I've for 5 years been saying it, and I can't tell you how cathartic it has been for me to just have that experience and have memories of my mother that are good, that because she died a really terrible death, but, to and I had to see her wholeness beyond her cancer and stuff, but uh, to be able to now have those memories of my mother without it being so sorrowful or so, and just smile and because during the experience when I was singing it, I couldn't not sob. My director knew it, and so during that, a lot of those songs, I was just sobbing as it was happening. So I had to kind of like very subtly tried to wipe the tears from my face, but the audience picked up on all of it. I have such an energy when I'm very animated when I perform, and I have to kind of pull back a little bit. But the audience does it. They pull it right from me, and they say, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked out in the audience and they're like, "Oh my God, your energy is amazing. You're on fire out there." And so that's the whole point of why I'm living. That's my expression. That's what God is trying to do through me. I believe it wholeheartedly.
And also, giving permission to people to have fun and enjoy their life. I feel like, as I'm listening to you, it's, since you've gotten sober and you've had these like, and you're doing all these different steps, somatic work, therapy, to sort of like let go and let go and let go and change this narrative and seek a better understanding of yourself and the world around you. And part of it is like having fun. I feel like there's something within us that wants us to have fun and play, right? And for you, it's I would imagine like many things, but one of them is singing and singing in front of people. And like I'm wondering, how does music and singing for your future sort of look like? What are some things that you're curious about doing?
Oh God. Well, I already took a position with the Erie Philharmonic Chorus, so I'm going to be a bass singer for them. And then I have a friend that has a band back in Erie as well. But I would love to, right now I just want to get there and get settled, but yeah, I might eventually try to do some studio work. Maybe there's so many things I want to do. I've been in the process of trying to write a book that someone's helping me with about my life experience, kind of like a memoir, I guess, because there's so many, and I guess all of us could write a book about our experience, but some of my stuff has been pretty crazy, so I would love to work on that. But as far as my musical, I would love to do some studio work, maybe get involved with, beyond the chorus, maybe get involved with some people that I know back in Erie and work with them a little bit. The wonderful thing about the Erie Philharmonic that I'm going to love is that they are uh, an adult chorus, but have students as well. And they have a whole philharmonic, which we never had in Las Vegas. But I'm so thrilled to be able to work with the students and just get to experience them because that's a part of our life when we're young that before life happens to us, you know what I mean? And it's just so refreshing to see young people just now building up their musical career and their voices. I'm going to be thrilled to see that because we don't have that here.
And give back, give back to the community, give back to, these little versions of ourselves that, when we were small. And, I'm wondering if there's like any advice you could give maybe someone that was maybe having difficulty in the creative space or in the singing, and like they really want to, they really want to be creative, or they really want to sing and or dance or whatever it may be. And if they're having difficulties, I'm wondering if there was, maybe a couple small steps that if, like that they could take, some advice for someone that really wants to be creative but is maybe worried or scared.
Okay. Well, I was petrified personally. I still get scared sometimes. I think it's part of the process, and I think, but there's something I discovered recently, and I've been singing for a long time. There's a little instrument, a vocal trainer that anyone can get who wants to sing. The biggest, one of the biggest, easiest things you could do to train your voice is humming, um, to hum your vocal for it so you can hear the resonation through everywhere. Humming "Happy Birthday," anything. But there's a little instrument. It deals with breath work so that your breath is coming from your back area, and you blow into it, and it's uh, has different settings on it. But what you do is you purse your lips, and what it does is it vocally trains your voice resonance where it should be. Because so many people want to sing through their throat, and it doesn't come from here. It comes from the front of your mouth. And that would be the best advice I could give anyone starting out. Is to, as a vocal trainer, to um, be able to isolate where the brightness is of your voice, kind of up front instead of back in your throat, because it's very damaging that way.
I love the that you kind of mentioned that, it's part of the process, being, being afraid, and sort of taking this leap of faith is part of, the part of the human experience. And a part, like you said, it's a part of the process. And the last thing I want to ask you is, we all need support. I need support, friends, family. And I'm wondering, how can listeners support you?
Really, I think all my needs are pretty met in my life. They could go on my page if they want to be inspired. Phillip.fife, www.phillip.fife.com. I'm on Facebook. I mainly use Facebook, but if you look at my page, there's a lot of inspiring things on that page. You know, uh, I just did a benefit for the Elton John AIDS Foundation. We raised millions of dollars for that. I kind of like just giving back. So if anyone wants to support, they could just the one thing that they could port if anyone's suffering from addiction or needs something different than a 12-step group. I think Dr. Amy Johnson would be a great direction to show people that there's something beyond um, the normal paradigm of addiction. So I just like to support others. I don't really, I have everything I need.
Philip will be making his way back to Pennsylvania, where he will be joining the Erie Philharmonic, getting his life coaching certificate, and finishing his memoir. You can connect with Philip on Facebook. If you enjoyed this episode, you can support the show by liking, sharing, or subscribing wherever you're listening. You can find us online at thisthingcalledlife.center. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit thisthingcalledlife.center/contact. Until next time, thank you for listening and being with us on This Thing Called Life.